Imagine living locked away for decades, not knowing if each day will be your last, only to suddenly be handed the keys to one of the world's most powerful empires. This isn't a fantasy story, it's the real-life tale of Ibrahim I, the 18th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, whose reign would become one of the most turbulent and bizarre chapters in its long history. Welcome back to our channel, where today we are delving into the tragic and chaotic story of the man they called Deli Ibrahim, or Ibrahim the Mad. To understand Ibrahim, we have to go back to his childhood, which was anything but normal. He was the son of the powerful Sultan Ahmed I and the legendary Qasem Sultan. But in the Ottoman court, being a prince wasn't always a ticket to a golden life. It was a dangerous Game of Thrones. The empire had a brutal practice known as fratricide, where a new sultan would often execute his brothers to eliminate any rivals. This practice was later replaced by something seemingly more humane, but perhaps just as cruel: the Kafes, or the cage. The Kafes was a set of lavishly decorated rooms within the Topkapi Palace, where potential heirs to the throne were kept under constant guard. It was a golden prison. Princes were confined here, sometimes for their entire lives, cut off from the outside world, from politics, and from normal human interaction. This was the world Ibrahim grew up in, while his older brother Murad IV ruled the empire with an iron fist. Ibrahim spent over 20 years in the Kafes. Think about the psychological toll. Every day was filled with uncertainty. He lived in constant fear of the executioner's bowstring, a fate that had met several of his other brothers. This prolonged isolation, this perpetual terror, warped his mind. He was deprived of the education and experience a future ruler would need. Instead, his world was one of suspicion, anxiety, and deep-seated trauma. When Murad IV lay on his deathbed in 1640, he allegedly ordered Ibrahim's execution, believing his unstable brother was unfit to rule. He supposedly wanted the Ottoman dynasty to end rather than continue under Ibrahim. But their mother, Qasem Sultan, intervened, saving Ibrahim's life and paving the way for him to become the next sultan. When the palace officials came to the Kafes to announce that he was the new ruler, Ibrahim was terrified. He was so convinced it was a trick, a final ruse to lure him out to his death, that he barricaded himself inside. He only believed them after they brought his brother Murad's body and laid it before his door. At the age of 25, the terrified prince, who had known nothing but confinement, was suddenly the absolute ruler of the Ottoman Empire, stretching from the Balkans to North Africa. The stage was set for a reign unlike any other. From the very beginning, it was clear that Ibrahim was not equipped to govern. Years of isolation had left him with no understanding of statecraft, military matters, or economics. He was completely dependent on the people around him. And who was the most powerful person in the palace? His mother, Qasem Sultan. She had been a dominant political force for decades, and with her psychologically fragile son on the throne, her power reached its zenith. She effectively ruled the empire as regent, making the major decisions while Ibrahim was more of a figurehead. Alongside his mother, a circle of palace officials, favorites, and cronies quickly realized they could manipulate the new sultan. One of the most notorious was a man named Hoka, a self-proclaimed healer and mystic who gained immense influence over Ibrahim by promising to cure his psychological ailments. Hoka and others like him were showered with wealth and positions of power, leading to rampant corruption. Government offices were sold to the highest bidder, justice became a commodity, and the state's treasury was treated like a personal piggy bank. Ibrahim's own behavior grew increasingly erratic. He would swing from moments of deep depression to fits of violent rage. He developed strange and expensive obsessions. For instance, he became fixated on amber, sable fur, and beautiful women. He ordered his agents to scour the empire and beyond for the most exquisite furs, spending astronomical sums to decorate his palace rooms entirely in sable. His obsession with women was even more destabilizing. He demanded his harem be filled with the most beautiful women imaginable. He famously became fixated on finding the heaviest woman in the empire, and when she was finally brought to him, he showered her with gifts and titles. In another infamous incident, driven by a rumor or a fit of paranoia, he allegedly ordered his entire harem of nearly 300 women to be drowned in the Bosphorus. While the exact details are debated by historians, the story itself highlights the terror and unpredictability that defined his court. This lavish spending and bizarre behavior were happening at a critical time for the empire. While the palace was indulging in luxury, the state's finances were collapsing. Taxes were raised to unbearable levels to fund the Sultan's whims, causing widespread discontent among the population. The administration was in chaos, with corrupt officials enriching themselves while the empire's infrastructure and military were neglected. Despite the internal turmoil, the empire was still engaged in foreign conflict. In 1645, Ibrahim launched a major military campaign against the Republic of Venice to capture the island of Crete. The Cretan War would turn into a long, grueling, and incredibly expensive conflict that would drain the Ottoman treasury for decades. While the initial invasion was successful, the siege of the main city, Candia, dragged on and on. The war required competent leadership and a stable government, two things the empire desperately lacked under Ibrahim. As the years went on, Ibrahim's mental state deteriorated further. He became completely detached from the reality of governing. His decisions were impulsive and often disastrous. He would appoint and dismiss his grand viziers, the highest officials in the government, on a whim. This created an environment of complete instability, where no one felt secure and long-term planning was impossible. The Janissaries, the elite infantry of the Ottoman army, grew restless. They were the backbone of the military, and they saw the empire being weakened by a ruler they considered incompetent and insane. The ulema, the class of religious scholars, were also horrified by his flouting of Islamic law and tradition. The discontent wasn't just among the elites. The people of Istanbul were suffering. The economy was in shambles, and the Sultan's bizarre and cruel actions had destroyed the prestige and authority of his office. The man who was supposed to be the shadow of God on earth had become a source of national embarrassment and fear. Something had to give. By 1648, the situation had reached a breaking point. A powerful coalition formed, uniting disgruntled Janissary leaders, influential members of the ulema, and even key figures within the palace. The Grand Mufti, the highest religious authority, issued a fatwa, a legal ruling, declaring that a sultan who was mentally unfit and violated religious law could be deposed. The conspirators had the legal and religious justification they needed. In August 1648, the storm broke. The Janissaries marched on the Topkapi palace and demanded Ibrahim's abdication. This time, not even his mother, Kosem Sultan, could protect him. Seeing that his reign was indefensible and that her own power was at risk, she agreed to the deposition in favor of her 7-year-old grandson, Mehmed IV. Ibrahim was seized and thrown back into the Kafes, the very prison that had shaped and broken him. But his story wasn't over. For 10 days the palace debated what to do with him. The presence of a living, deposed sultan, even one as unpopular as Ibrahim, was a threat. His supporters could try to restore him to power, plunging the empire into a civil war. The conspirators, fearing for their own lives, decided on a final, brutal solution. They obtained a second fatwa, authorizing the execution of the deposed sultan for the good of the state. Executioners were sent to the Kafes. Ibrahim, who had lived his life in fear of this very moment, met his end at their hands. He was strangled, becoming one of the very few Ottoman sultans to be formally executed by his own state. His tragic and chaotic 8-year reign was over. His death paved the way for his young son, Mehmed IV, to take the throne, initiating another long period where powerful regents, like his grandmother Kosem Sultan, would hold the real power. So what is the legacy of Ibrahim the Mad? His story is a powerful and tragic illustration of the deep-seated problems within the 17th century Ottoman system. The practice of the Kafes, designed to prevent succession wars, created a new problem. Rulers who were psychologically damaged and utterly unprepared for the immense responsibility of the throne. Ibrahim's reign exposed the empire's vulnerability to corruption, palace intrigue, and weak leadership. He wasn't born a monster. He was a product of a cruel and dysfunctional system. His life serves as a dark, cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of power without wisdom, and the personal tragedy of a man broken by the very institution he was born to lead. What do you think? Was Ibrahim truly mad, or was he a victim of his circumstances? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into one of history's most fascinating and tragic reigns, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from the past. We'll see you in the next video.